What do you think happens when we die? Maybe it's a bit of this sort of stuff for a while, or maybe it's just nothing. Maybe we have to hold a baby like this woman. Maybe Jesus is there. The one thing I do know is that I have very little experience in this area.
I really thought that once we're done here, we go.
Right.
There's nothing else. Now I'm starting to realize that we really do go somewhere after this. There's something else there.
The voice said, "You cannot change the past, but you can make better choices in the future. Everything is interconnected, and pay more attention to your relationships. Be gentle with everyone as I'm gentle with you." I said, gentle? What's gentle about all this?
Oh, Jim.
I had the white light. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a tunnel, but I get why people say it's a tunnel. Then there were entities, beings, angels, spirits, whoever, whatever nomenclature you want to assign to it, but there were external conscious beings who immediately said, "You're okay. You've always been okay," which was significant because my biological family is pretty emotionally abusive and controlling, and I never felt okay. Then I asked, but not words. It's all like telepathic. I inquired, have I learned enough? Did I learn enough in this lifetime? And the response was, you haven't taught enough. And then I went immediately to the whole life review. It's everything all at once. Everything suddenly makes sense. All of the pieces come together. So it started with the transgressions that I had perpetrated on other people. And it showed me how they felt it was negative, but how it benefited them from their life path. And then all of the transgressions that I felt were perpetrated against me and the other person's side of that, and then how it related to my own growth and autonomy as a human being.
Were you religious at all, or spiritual in any way when you were a lawyer?
When I went to law school, I actually had scholarships from the American Atheists to pay for law school.
Oh, right. Okay. That's interesting.
So,
organization.
yeah, like, I was, flag waving, griping about, the imposition of a religious belief in the United States. Like, my whole life up until that point was about my atheism. And, like when I checked into the hospital, I wrote, "I'm an atheist. Do not send a chaplain to my room. I do not want to see a religious person." Like, I was ridiculous about it. And, all of my advanced directives, don't send a chaplain. I don't want a chaplain. And the first thing out of my mouth when I came to in ICU was, "I need a chaplain."
Well, it's almost as if they're the only form of post-care for this type of thing. One of my next questions was going to be, despite sort of the overwhelming evidence, I think 20 million people in America alone have had near-death experiences. Why is there no post-care? So I was going to ask, did you have anybody ask you about, had you experienced anything during your surgery, or was there any sort of engagement with the nurses there?
No, and this is where things get really wonky in my situation. The chaplain came, thumbed through my record, and said, "It says here you're an atheist. What is it that you think that I can help you with?" And I said, "I don't know, something happened, but you're like the only person that I can talk to." And he said, "Well, if you can't tell me what you need, I don't know how to help you. Just let them know if you want me to come back." And he left.
Wow, so even he didn't know how to respond.
Yeah, right? And this is in Seattle, Washington,
Yeah.
at a world-class cancer center.
It seems obvious to me that if people are having experiences during surgery, literally meeting ethereal beings, coming back saying they've experienced the oneness of the universe, the singularity of time, perhaps there should be a little care given, maybe some aftercare, at least a small chat. And the credibility of such cases is growing every day. If a lawyer wasn't good enough for you, come on. Here's a cracking guy. He worked for NASA. He's got an Emmy, for Christ's sake. Here's him hooking up a cool satellite feed to Mount Everest.
Several news stations conducted live interviews with climbers on the mountain, something that had never been done before. Jim transmitted a live feed for CNN from the USS Independence during the Gulf War.
We're continually working on the video compression to get you as best video quality as we can over the available bandwidth. Obviously, the satellite systems will become smaller and more portable and easier to use.
Hi, my name is Jim Bruton, and on October 6, 2016, I was in a really bad plane crash. I ruptured both lungs, I broke all my ribs, I broke my right leg in multiple places, had a hole in my lower back from a battery breaking loose and hitting me. And luckily, there was a man fishing nearby, a lake where I was aiming for, who was able to come over, keep me propped up, called 911 and got a medical helicopter in to pull me out. Once the helicopter landed, extracted me, and took me up to Hartford, Connecticut's trauma center to a waiting team of physicians, they were able to put me into a breathing machine and put breathing tubes down my throat and then contact my family. So when my family got there a few hours later, they found me, barely hanging on. I had escaped my restraints once and they put me back in them, and it was decided to put me into a medically induced coma. So once they did, I teleported. It was no tunnel I was going through like is commonly reported. I literally teleported to this terrace of a tall gray building in a post-apocalyptic landscape. Imagine a city like New York 1,000 years after a meteor strike or a nuclear blast, and just how horrible that would look.
So when I woke up on this other side, if you will, it's like being teleported. I was immediately, let's say, up on a high terrace of a tall building, like outside, and I was on my right knee, and my left foot was planted flat, and I was on my right knee. And I remember I just looked up, and everything was gray, like gray buildings, dark, brooding gray sky, like out of Wuthering Heights or something,
right.
And very gothic looking. Absolutely a dead city. No, not one soul, not one sound. Not that it was that I was deaf; it was just that quiet. Okay. And I looked around, and all of a sudden I realized I had this nausea, this sickness in my stomach, and it hit me like a wave. And I'm like, wow. And I just said, I don't think I can stand this. And I said that out loud, if you will. And when I did that, I happened to look over to my left, and I saw this large egg-shaped structure made out of lattice work, like bands of metal, if you will, with a lot of open areas.
Like the one behind you in the picture, right?
Oh, exactly, yeah, right? Yeah. And when I said I can't stand this anymore, all of a sudden I could hear the sound coming from inside it, and I realized it was a lot of gears spinning around.
How would you describe the sound? Did it sound mechanical?
You know what? It literally sounded, if you've been to an amusement park, right, and you've seen a roller coaster as it ratchets up a hill, it goes clack, 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 clack. Yeah. It literally sounded like that.
Wow.
Like clack, clack, clack. But it wasn't too loud. Sometimes it almost sounded like it was whispering. But I somehow intuitively knew this thing and I are connected. Now, what's weird is there was no fear in being in this place. There was no, hey, where am I? What's going on? No. It was just like accepting that reality as, here I am. Okay, deal with it.
Okay.
That right there is kind of weird. But anyway, when this egg, let's just say the egg was the only real thing of interest here. Everything else, like a dead city, what do I need to go up exploring it for? This thing is right here and something interesting is going on. Yeah. So I get over with pain. I kind of hobbled my way over to it, and I looked through that open lattice at the gears inside.
What kind of scale are we talking? Are they clock size, or is it 10 foot, 20 foot tall, or is it the size of a...
I would say that the egg structure itself, as we say in the States, about 4 stories or 50 feet, or 14 meter, 15 meters high. So
you could clearly see all the mechanisms inside moving.
And I would say they were all different sizes. None were super microscopic. Let's say they're about this big, and various sizes. Each one, as I looked at it, it's as if it had a video feed of what it represented. And it's like that video feed just sort of played in my head, whichever one I looked at. And I realized these were events from my future.
Wow.
Not my present, they were from my future. And
did you realize this at the time then? Or was this something you realized later?
no, I think one thing I realized is I was really in the present. I was really in the moment.
Okay.
And so there's just sort of, again, an acceptance of what you're seeing. And it became clear pretty soon what I think I was there to do. And as I looked at them, I don't know what made me think I could do this, but I reached through that open lattice in the egg to try to touch one of the gears. Probably because, if it's not definite, but it seems to have meaning, is it real? Does it have a feeling?
Yes.
And so I reached in there, and I guess you could say I felt it. It felt real enough. But I touched one gear, almost maybe by accident, and I got another wave of pain in my stomach.
Okay.
And it's at that point I think I said, what is this? And literally, it's like a telepathic conversation began with a voice.
Okay. So at this point we've seen this egg, and you feel like this egg was part of you almost, like some sort of symbolic representation of your future and maybe your past and your present, right? But then all of a sudden you hear this. Is it like an ethereal voice? How did it manifest?
I mean, it was just that's the funny thing. When we sense the world around us, it's as if all of our senses feed let's say, a projector in our mind that projects up on a screen the filtering of that reality. We've seen a little spectrum this big, so it projects that up there. And even though somebody may say something and mean one thing, what we project is something else. We project our desires, we project our fears, we project our ignorance, if you will. But that composite picture of what we're sensing with our five senses in the world is that picture we project. It's as if this voice bypassed all the senses and just sort of projected directly on the screen.
Oh, wow.
There's no sound to it that you would really characterize a voice by. Male, female, dark, high. It just didn't apply. The information did.
Right.
So that's the best analogy I can draw explaining it. But so to say telepathy just sounds so trite, but to say, no, it's as if it just bypassed everything and appeared where it needed to, the destination. So I remember saying, what is this? And it literally said, you're in the in-between. And I said, in between what? And it said, but everything. Between the past and the future. And I think I said at some point that this doesn't make any sense. And it said, you're standing inside basically the eternity of a single moment. And I said, what does that mean? It said, well, do you remember the world to which your body belongs? And I thought real hard. I said, I don't. And it said,
really?
You see the truth of all the past is dust. And I'll be honest, I had no memory of this place. If some person had come up to me and said, well, you can't stay here any longer, or you won't be able to go back, I'd say, go back where? To your family. What family?
Right.
Because this was an incredibly depersonalizing experience. I mean, absolutely depersonalizing. I would definitely say, someone should never say, I am so humble. So I'm not saying that, but I am saying it's as if my ego was stripped away, as, which we could obviously interpret as not only just your self-identification, but pride. There was certainly nothing to feel prideful for at that moment. But yeah, it was like Jim didn't exist.
Right.
I don't know. The only parallel I can draw is to this. I have been in some high-stress situations, and we all have. And I would say one experience a lot of people can relate to is sometimes when you get stressed enough, it's almost like you split into two. There's a part of you that's dealing with a situation, like flying the airplane with no engine, or about to have a car crash, or trying to resuscitate a child that drowned, something like that. It's as if there's a separate part of you that sort of steps aside and is just observing. No judgment, no input, just observing.
Yeah.
Take that part of you, and that's what I was. So it really makes me wonder about how we, who we are as people in terms of our, the soul, the part that continues on, animates the part that's very now specific. And sometimes I think you can separate those two out. And I seem to be definitely separated in this case.
I feel like shit, I don't know what's going on, and then all of a sudden, my world became soft and foggy, and I went somewhere. The next thing I remember is I wake up and I'm in this dark space, and I felt like my body was floating in water. And I look, and this face appears. Stands into this light source, and only from this way up I see his face, and it's this white guy. And then from behind him this black lady appears, and then from the other side another face. And at that point I'm not counting, I don't even know, I only know those two faces. And now I realize what it reminded me of. It was like the Bohemian Rhapsody music video. Those faces, but it wasn't Queen. I honestly don't know who those people were, but they're just, it was this.
I walked myself into the emergency room, told them I was having chest pains. They brought me in, started taking tests, and then everything became soft and foggy. And somewhere. It was this dark space. I felt like my body was floating in water. And for a moment I was alone. And then right in front of me this face appears of this male. And he's only lit from his chest up. And then from behind him another face of a black female. And then all these faces kept coming from behind others, and they were just looking at me. And it finally hit me that I am not in my body anymore, and I started fighting in my head because I couldn't speak. There was no sound. There was a light source, but it was coming from behind me. But I didn't even give them a chance to say anything, because that's when I started fighting that I needed to come back. And I started screaming, but I couldn't vocalize it. But I remember hearing it in my head, and then the next thing I knew was that the first male that showed his face to me, he went from a very solemn look to a concerned look, and then I woke up on the hospital bed, and I was screaming my head off. No, don't put me back there. I'm not ready to go. And they are holding me down. I was combative and I was fighting. Grown men off me. I had all this power.
Really?
And the doctor comes over and he says, "You're okay. Shocked your heart back." And I was like, what does he mean? I don't understand. And there's more, and eventually it may come to me. I am thinking of doing hypnosis later on when I'm better.
Yeah.
Just to see if there's something else. I think because ever since the things have been different, my dreams are extremely vivid.
Okay.
To the sense where things are happening after I dream it, and not necessarily to me, it'll be to someone else that I'm close to.
Really?
Oh, it's been, I lacked faith before all of this.
That was my next question, actually. You weren't spiritual at all before this?
I believed in something. I didn't really believe in, like, a God, or I was a skeptic, especially about Jesus and all that. I didn't see Jesus. I mean, maybe that was him and his disciples, but I think it's something else. I think it is more spiritual.
Right.
Starting to feel like maybe they are my spirit guides. A team of them.
So,
some people maybe have one or two. I have like I have a bunch.
So to you, it must seem very, very obvious that this thing happened because you have such a clear memory of it. What would you say to somebody, I know what I'd say, but who thought that this could be a product of your brain, that they're just the neurons firing in your brain in a panic? What would you say to those people?
I would say, first of all, the fact that I'm here after 5 minutes really is a miracle, and that I was speaking so clearly. From my research, it's 30 to 50 seconds after your heart stops beating, you stop getting oxygen to your brain.
Right.
So I really shouldn't have seen anything. And the fact that I was gone for 5 minutes, I should have come back, really not speaking so clearly, and I should have probably had to learn how to walk again, some people were saying.
Okay.
And how do I tell people, no, look, it wasn't my brain backfiring, it wasn't residual, whatever they want to say. The only thing, this is where I'm starting to learn, I can't make them believe me.
No.
That's been my struggle, especially with my family, is they want me to stop talking about it.
Really?
They don't understand it, yeah. And I get it.
Yeah, well, my interest is, I think, learning about NDEs is that it reveals about how scared people are of talking about death and how unconnected, I think, the Western world especially is about talking about death.
I was too. I thought it was taboo to talk about it.
Which is why I think it's so important that we do, really.
Right. I think the other surprise for me was that I didn't see my dad, and I was very close to him. But
He
now
passed on already, right?
I didn't see him. If I saw him, I wouldn't have fought. I would have went with him. I wouldn't be here.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. But I'm really fascinated by why you saw people that you didn't know. It's almost as if, why would your memory put those people there? Why would your brain conjure something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, why would it spit out these people and me, because I am a skeptic. You know, I'm doing my own investigation. I went back to see who was the ER team that saved me, and I'm just like, that's not them.
Right.
That is not them. I've even started watching old shows that I watched before, thinking maybe it's people from shows.
I was going to say, imagine if you saw somebody, you'd freak right out.
So far, no, it's not that. I had said that I never had that faith. I've always lacked it. I have that faith now.
Right.
And it's one of those things where you say, oh, we're all here for a reason, for sure.
Right.
You exist because you have something to do. We're all supposed to do something here. We're supposed to find something that makes us ultimately happy. And that's why I'm still here. Look, I wasn't supposed to be here. I had that chance 90% that I wasn't supposed to. But all I can say is that I did fight. It wasn't like, oh, okay, a divine entity came in and said, it's not your time. There was no conversation.
So did you feel like you made a choice?
That would happen if there was going to be one. I just left.
Okay. Yeah, and you feel like you chose to come back in some way?
I did.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's such a fascinating subject. There's so much science that's beginning to prove how important it is that we look at it. But I think, like you said, it taps into people's fear of death, that they're afraid to approach that.
Because it's something they're not in control of. What makes people feel better is I tell them, and this is 100% true, I used to have a big fear of dying. I don't now. There's no pain.
Really?
Dying is easy, at least in the way I did.
So what have we learned? Don't be afraid of death. Everything's fine.